Sacred Bear Mountain in Amherst, Virginia. We are one of 7 federally recognized tribes in Virginia. Although we no longer wear our traditional clothing day to day, we still live our heritage and we continue to overcome hardships from the past. Our citizens live and work in this beautiful place, and we welcome you to visit our museum in sacred lands. Walk in the footsteps of our ancestors and attend our annual powwow. Come learn about our stories, share in our food, and experience our culture. We have always been here, ready to meet you and teach the world about our people, our language, and our way of life here in Monacan country.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Henry Skerritt. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Art here at the University of Virginia and the curator at the Kluge-Ruhe Aboriginal Art Collection. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Monacan Nation as the traditional owners of the land that we are now gathered on, and to pay my respects to their elders past and present. I would also like to acknowledge all the First Nations representatives in the room, be they from the Americas to Arnhem Land, the Torres Strait Islands and beyond. I think I'm going to breathe. This has been an incredible week of programs here in Charlottesville. The second Charlottesville Indigenous Art Takeover, which has seen 7 exhibitions launched at 5 venues across our city, each one testament to the strength and power of First Nations art. This art has long been derided with terms like primitive or ethnographic, but Indigenous Australian art is now rightfully taking its place on the world stage as amongst the most significant movements in human history. Today, we culminate the end of an incredible weekend of programs with the second W. Wanambi Distinguished Lecture. This lecture is made possible by support from UVA Arts Endowment, the Centre for Global Innovation and Inquiry, and the Virginia Humanities. The lecture is named after Mr. W. Wanambi, a visionary leader, artist, filmmaker, author, and curator. He was also a beloved father, brother, uncle, and friend. I count myself extremely fortunate to have been able to work and travel with him over 7 years while he guided the exhibition Madayin, 8 Decades of Aboriginal Australian Bark Painting from Yirrkala. Sadly, Mr. Wanambi passed 3 months before it opened at the Hood Museum of Art in September 2022. And while that's very sad, it's a somber way to begin this lecture. Just yesterday, I had the great pleasure of watching his daughter, Dukumal Wanambi, work on the layout for the final instalment of the exhibition, which opens at the Asia Society in New York in September this year. Mr. Wanambi would have been so proud to see Dukumal carrying on his legacy. Such cross-cultural work is physically, culturally, and intellectually exhausting. It takes enormous courage. And without Mr. Wanambi, and now Dukumal, and the younger generation of Yolŋu who have so bravely followed in his footsteps, exhibitions like Madayin would not be imaginable. Today, I have the honour of introducing Mayatili Marika, a great friend of the Kluge-Ruhe Aboriginal Art Collection and an ambassador for Indigenous Australian art and culture. Mayatili is a proud Yolŋu woman of the Rirratjingu clan and belongs to one of Australia's most significant artistic and political dynasties. For over a decade, she has been the cultural curator and programmer of the Garma Festival, Australia's largest annual Indigenous event in northeast Arnhem Land. She also works for the University of Melbourne, where her role provides cultural knowledge, leadership, and support for the university's strategy and partnerships in northeast Arnhem Land. Marika connects and builds the university's relationship with Yolŋu people working across the university in a range of academic and professional levels to create, develop and execute opportunities for collaboration. It is just magnificent to have such a dear friend of Kluge-Ruo here today in this distinguished venue to deliver the second Wanambi Distinguished Lecture. So please join me in welcoming Mayatili Marika.
Yo, nami bukmak. Ngayam yako, Mayatili Marika. Ngarit mingonya ko Jenny, babat mingonya ko Wandjuk Marika O.B.E, marit mingonya ko Mawalan Marika. Baparo ngaya Rirratjingu, ngayinya ko nolon boy, kayar kala, kayalangbara. Markap miwana. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here in this beautiful country and this distinguished venue. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional landowners, the Monacan Nation, who have welcomed us so generously this week. I acknowledge Mr. W. Wanambi for his great vision in curating the Madayin exhibition, and it is a great honour to be delivering the W. Wanambi Distinguished Lecture today. I acknowledge his daughter, Tukumul Wanambi. I am so proud, as her auntie, to see her blossoming, and so proud that she is carrying on the legacy and destiny of her father. This trip has made me see the importance of us as the next generation of leaders. It is imperative that we honour and embrace the passing of the mantle to ensure our ancient Yolŋu knowledge systems continue for time immemorial. I also want to acknowledge other leaders that have passed and come before, who have made us the people we are today. We must honour the footsteps they have walked on this earth before us. Too many elders dying too young, taking so much with them. They are encyclopedias, and with each passing, we lose something. And we must shoulder the simultaneous responsibility and great privilege to preserve our cosmos. I am joined in the room by my family, and I feel the presence of my ancestors' spirits all around too. They are embedded in each and every artwork in the Madayin exhibition. I thank them for the ceremony and the strength they have given me, and for keeping the sacredness of our law strong. My clan is Rirratjingu. My father is Wandjuk Marika O.B.E, and Wandjuk's father was Mawalan I, both of whose paintings are in Madayin. Mawalan I, my grandfather, was there at the beginning in the 1930s when incursions started into our land, and the cattlemen came and the police came, bringing harshness and terror. Up until the start of the 20th century, the clans of Arnhem Land had traded successfully with Makassar people from Indonesia for centuries, and this history remains in our language, our thinking, and our DNA. My grandfather and my father Wandjuk were also there to welcome the missionaries when they first came to Yirrkala. And later, when the miners came, they resisted them and were authors of the Bark Petition and originators of the Gove Land Rights case, and then the Land Rights Act. This was the start of a tradition of using the skills and knowledge of the Yolŋu world to engage with the rest of Australia. It is a tradition that, of course, continues here today and in the art, music, oratory, and the diplomacy of Yolŋu leaders. This afternoon, I want to speak as a Rirratjingu woman about what I have learned growing up in the Yolŋu world and the worldview that guides me in my life. Firstly, we are taught as Rirratjingu people to believe in perpetual motion, to always move forward and to embrace what lies ahead. This is the reality of the Djankawo, the creation sisters who are at the heart of Rirratjingu beliefs. The Djankawo travelled from the east, from the island of Buralko, and their journey was guided by Barnumbir, the morning star, until they arrived at Yallangbara. It is Yallangbara that is the birthplace of Rirratjingu and all Tua people. At Yallangbara is a beautiful water source that is Darjalk, crystal clear, and contains the deep knowledge or milngur of our clan leaders. This is font of knowledge. Milngur is also the fontanelle on a newborn baby's head. It is a sign that the child has come from deep in the sacred waters of the land. And it reminds us that each child is from the earth and in fact is a gift from our ancestors. Milngur also tells us of the purity of children and that as a child grows, the sacredness of Milngur remains in each of us. This gives us a deep and everlasting connection with the land. We have come from the land, and to the land we will return. It reflects the truth of the Yolŋu philosophical lens on the cosmos. This Yolŋu philosophy came organically as it reflected the concepts of Yoto Yindi, mother and child, to create balance and fairness despite difference. It also required strength. In our language, this strength is called jambach. Diplomacy is in our DNA as Yolŋu people, but I often wonder how it was that my grandfather and my father made sense of the world that was formed around them. There was a new language, a new religion, new laws with new authorities to enforce those laws. Our language, our religion, and our laws and our philosophies were dismissed and cast aside. When we spoke, we were not listened to. My father, Wandjuk Marika, was jambach, a man of highest degree and excellence. The world knew my father as a famous artist. Just like Mr. Wanambi, my father recognized the power of taking Yolŋu art to the world. In 1976, as chair of the Aboriginal Arts Board, he travelled to the United States with Gurunaika Yunupingu and Chika Dixon to promote the exhibition Art of the First Australians. That exhibition was staged as a gift to the American people on the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Madayin is a gift in this tradition of Yolŋu cultural diplomacy. On that visit, my father reconnected with his friend Ed Rue, who he had previously met in Australia. Their friendship was based on mutual respect despite cultural and philosophical differences. They were very different men with different experience, but art brought them together. Those that had come before us had the vision and foresight to set the precedent to use art as a communication tool to elevate and amplify Yolŋu knowledge. These precedents have created the map that has shown us the way, and we have followed their footsteps to this very moment in time. My father was the first Yolŋu person to have a passport, but it took him 6 years. He had to have the consent of the Protector of Aborigines because Aboriginal Australians were not yet counted as citizens. A public servant had to tick him off as an Australian first, and even then it took 6 years. But as with the Jankao, he kept moving forward. This is Jambaj. Jambaj is our way of thinking about ourselves, our past, present, and future. The power of our profound, multifaceted, multidimensional, and inextricable connection to the cosmos. Jambaj is everywhere around us. The individual and collective excellence of Yolŋu that we see every day. Jambaj is the countless footsteps our ancestors have walked before us. Like the trajectory of the Jankao, each step forward adds to the 65,000 plus years of the deep wisdom and knowledge systems of our people. My father used to say, there is no real distinction for us between art and life. As Yolŋu people, our paintings are our constitution. Rome, Manike, Minche, Bungol, Daruk, Gurutto, Rakki, Jalkari, Bundur. Our ceremonies, our songlines, our languages, our dances, our kinship, our laws. This is our identity. This is us. The earth is our mother, but the land is our backbone, both ancient and timeless. Our paintings speak of all of these things. Each brushstroke, each line, each dot, each space, each colour, deliberate, contemplative, meditative, purposeful. Our paintings are not static images. They are alive with the spirit of our land and our people. We sing the land, and the land sings us. It has been this way since time immemorial, because there is no real distinction for us between art and life. As I look around the room and see you all gathered here under the dome of the Rotunda this afternoon, I know that this is the quintessence of reconciliation. We are all part of this. Yolŋu ka balanda rambangi. black and white, together. Just like the mixing of salt water and fresh water, when two cultures come together, there are always differences, bubbling, turbulent. But the murky waters can become clear when we take the time to rest in the stillness. My father learnt English from the anthropologist Donald Thompson. He was one of the first Yolŋu interpreters. Later, the missionaries marked him out for a career in the Methodist Church. He refused, but as a gesture of Yolŋu diplomacy, he stayed in Yirrkala to translate the Bible. In 1962, alongside my grandfather and 13 other clan leaders, he painted the Yirrkala church panels to keep Yolŋu ancestral law in the consciousness and forefront of our people. In the 1970s, he lobbied the Australia Council to fund the newly founded Buku-Larrngay Mulka Arts Centre, which still stands today in my community of Yirrkala. This was the start of the extraordinary Yolŋu art movement, where the sacredness of Yolŋu life was given to Australia and the world. My father understood the power of the Yolŋu voice. Yolŋu had to adapt and be real about it. Last year, I travelled with a delegation to Washington, D.C. to open the Madayin exhibition featuring my grandfather, my father, my aunties, and my siblings, 4 generations of our Rirratjingu clan, 4 generations of Yolŋu excellence. There is no real distinction for us between art and life. In 1963, art was used to bring the Yolŋu voice to Parliament. On 4 sheets of eucalyptus bark, my father used the missionaries' typewriters to set down the words that would become the Yirrkala bark petitions. Around these words, my father and grandfather, along with several other artists, painted their designs. My father saw that our ancient knowledge systems are as powerful or more powerful than anything else in the world. He lamented that his ancient knowledge was not understood or respected in Australia. He sought a voice wherever he could find it. This quest runs through today. This quest, driven by sacred art and aesthetics, led to the land rights movement, which my family took to the High Court of Australia in the landmark case Milirpum and others v. Nabalco. As part of their claim, the old men took Justice Blackburn to view sacred objects in the hope that he would recognise and understand the beauty and abiding truth of Yolŋu connection to country. My father believed if Australian people saw and understood this, their rights to this land would be self-evident. Fairness and equity would surely follow. My father gave evidence to Justice Blackburn and was broken-hearted when Australian law rejected the truth of our title. My father and his family, Yunupingu and his family, the Jappo, the Galpo, and the many other clans of northeast Arnhem Land, together then sought the next best thing, which was land rights and a Land Rights Act. And again, they kept moving forward. Despite the hurdles, despite the barriers, despite the deaths of so many old people and the libraries of knowledge that went with them, gone before they were able to see the Mabo decision bring Aboriginal law into the common law of the nation, and then the statute books with the Native Title Act. It is fitting that we are also joined by a delegation of Erikoiki Mabo's homelands in Senadkez here in Charlottesville during our trip. There can be no progress until there is recognition that Indigenous peoples were here before settlement. Australia is our ancestral country, and yet we are the most disadvantaged and marginalised. And despite our excellence, despite all we have struggled for, despite all we have achieved, we are those with the least power in our own country. Today, we find ourselves at a crossroads. Yolŋu art is being recognised around the world. Exhibitions like Madayin spectacularly illustrate that Yolŋu art is some of the finest ever produced in the world. We stand alongside our Monacan family and all other Indigenous First Nations people in an unstoppable movement which elevates and amplifies our individual and collective voices. This is a powerful legacy. My father and others have paved the way for us as the new generation. We have the responsibility to move forward, not backwards, just as the Django showed us. If you take one thing away from the Madayin exhibition, I implore you to see Australia through a new lens. To recognise that our art, ceremony, spirituality, connection to country, and ancient knowledge systems have no boundaries. In fact, they speak a language that is universal. In working with museums, we are not asking you to speak for us, but to intensify and strengthen our voices and celebrate the incredible contribution of Indigenous Australians in our country's land and sea. This is Djambutj. And it takes strength to acknowledge that First Peoples have been here since time immemorial. Change is hard, but let us be inspired by those great leaders that have gone before us. This is Djambutj, fearless, strong, united. This is my father's legacy, and it lives on in me and my children, my kinsmen here with me today, and all First Peoples. Like my father and Mr. Wanambi and Dr. Djambua Marawili, I am inviting you all to walk this journey with us. Let us blaze new trails together, nation to nation, person to person. For art is a universal language understood and spoken by all. Yolŋu.
Thank you so much for that, Mayatili. I think of the hundreds of lectures that I have been in this dome room, that is the first one that ever received a standing ovation. So, and of course, I would like to thank you all for coming, and again, to thank the great support of our sponsors, the UVA Arts Endowment, the Centre for Global Innovation and Inquiry at UVA, and Virginia Humanities. And lectures like these wouldn't be possible without their support. Now, I know that you all have a million questions for Mayatili, and so what I would encourage you to do is to head downstairs and grab yourself a glass of wine, and she may be willing to answer some of them. But thank you all so much for coming today, and please join us downstairs in the upper west oval room of the Rotunda, where there is another exhibition from the artists of Buku-Larrngay Mulka in Yirrkala that you can enjoy whilst you have a glass of wine and something to eat. Thank you very much.